Hello, David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. We are here for another discussion of somebody from the Bond community, and I'm really excited about this individual because it's somebody you might not have seen or heard because he is the wizard behind the magic of iconic alternatives. John, welcome to the show.
How's everyone doing?
We are doing great. We're excited because let me start off by telling everybody a little bit about what I know about iconic alternatives. People know that I used to do something called the Frugal Bond, and for quite a long time, I started to do more branded things, more things that were kind of today. And the Frugal Bond moments that I did, whether it was articles or videos, kind of fell by the wayside. And there was really one gentleman out of the entire globe that picked it up and then even did better, evolved it. And that was John from Iconic Alternatives. So I knew that when I was doing this series of the Bond community, I had to get him on and pick his brain. And let's start off with a basic one. Tell us, what is Iconic Alternatives?
So the website started and it came out of the AGB 007 fan forum. And as you well know from, you're a major contributor to these threads and to this movement of trying to find the Frugal Bond pieces. And so what we were having was this kind of dilemma where people would say, does anyone know if there's an alternative to or an option for, the Casino Royale jacket or, these suede chukkas? And we'd end up with these threads that would just have all these links that were expiring and, we couldn't keep track of everything all the time. So at the end of 2015, I got very, very sick with the flu. I was in my bed for about 4 days, and I was just going stir crazy. So I grabbed my laptop and created this WordPress template, and I just started posting. The idea was that each post would be dedicated to one particular garment. So here's the post on the Harrington jacket. Here's the post on the chukkas. Here's the post on, on the Y3 jacket, whatever it might be. And I just started pulling in all these links. And the idea being that if you were looking for an alternative for budget reasons or because it was no longer available, you'd be able to click on this post and find the most recent options that are out there on the market. And so I announced it at the start of December. And my expectation was that we were going to have 10, 12 clicks, people looking for whatever. And the first day I launched it, we actually had 800 hits, which completely blew me away. I wasn't expecting that at all. And from there, it just started kind of evolving. I decided to make it start looking a little bit more professional, giving a little bit more background on the different pieces I was recommending, trying to include pictures of the different options that were available. So pulling in the product photos from the websites, and just keep kind of dressing it up. And it just kind of kept growing from there, and it kept adding more and more alternatives for different things, and it just kept expanding. So that was kind of his genesis.
I tell you what, I am not surprised that it was so popular from the beginning, and it continues to be even more popular. I've always said that we have an invisible hobby. You can wear your hobby out into the world, but people want it to be accessible. Nobody wants to be in this hobby and go, I can't be in this hobby because I don't make a certain amount a year, or I can't find this item. What you've done, what Iconic Alternatives I really think has done, is to say it's accessible to everyone. I don't care how much you make or even what your body type is. There's something for you in this Bond world. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most important aspects of this is you and Danielle, did that great video about together where you're talking about the idea of budgeting in the family and how do you budget for this hobby. And we tend to be, as fans, we tend to be kind of impulsive. So, we see something that's, Daniel Craig is wearing here. We see, especially now that we're seeing the behind the scenes from the new film, and everyone wants, this right now. Mm-hmm. And we don't stop to consider very often, is this actually right for me? Is this going to fit with my personal style? Will this work with the other pieces that I have? Can I create, a look out of this? And on the other side, are Tom Ford jeans the right fit for me? This has been a huge discussion that everyone's having. Are they slim fit, those gray selvage? Are they slim fit or are they straight? Are they slim? It's like you get the ones that fit you. Yeah. That's So I try and be pretty pragmatic and practical about how we're approaching this hobby. And whether it's because of budgetary reasons, whether it's because the item is no longer available, it's just no longer being made, whether it's because it's just not right for you. You can experiment with some of these things, and there's a way to do it that, if you think through it and have a bit of a plan and a bit of a process, you can think through this and actually create the wardrobe that you want, based and inspired on James Bond, but one that fits much more with your personality, with your lifestyle.
Yeah, which I think is means everything. And I want to actually gravitate to the word that you just used, impulsive. I've always wondered, because you have a day job, lest anybody thinks Iconic Alternatives is paying the bills. No, but because you need to prioritize and you're only one person, with a lot of contributors doing this, how do you say, something, I'm going to focus on a Harrington post, or everybody's screaming for the beige suit from Matera that Bond wears, so I need to move to that. How do you figure out what to do next?
So I my posting schedule is actually, I lay it out 2 months in advance. Wow. And I always leave these gaps, especially now that we have the filming going on and we don't know what's going to happen today. I mean, like in 2 seconds, we'll finish this conversation and we'll suddenly see all the shots from the Daily Mail and he'll be wearing something new and it's like, great, okay, there's another thing to look for. So I try and leave these gaps in there that give me some flexibility to drop in the emergency posts, the ones that are going to hit right now. The Bond 25 watch was one of them. I screwed up on the strap, but I think I got the details of the actual watch okay. So the idea is that we've always got some standard posts that we know we have to update. Those are the ones that are popular throughout the year, and they're actually relatively easy posts for me to update because the content's already written, the template's there. All I really have to do is go and look for the new alternatives and plug those into the post. Mm-hmm. If I'm generating new content, that can take a little bit longer, and that depends on what the season, what's available out there right now. The hardest posts for me to write are the ones where there's a lot of alternatives for something, because I have to kind of filter those down, and I kind of have a checklist, like my wish list of what details to be looking for. And then, the other ones that are very, very difficult that I'm always searching for alternatives are the ones where they're just kind of one-offs. So, the Barber, the Mr. White jacket from Dior, those are very unique pieces, and it's hard to find an alternative that even comes close to what the original looked like. So that's kind of the process behind it, is try and plan ahead as much as I can, but be prepared for anything at any time.
So how do you, what's your process to find the alternatives themselves?
When I started, I was using a lot of Google and digging through websites a lot. I use Shop Style, for example, for the UK and for the United States. But you start to learn that the way that those sites operate, a lot of the times they're not presenting all the alternatives that are out there because of their affiliate links or because, if commissions are being paid or not. So it was really just kind of digging in and getting my hands dirty and just going through everything I could possibly find. Now, after doing this for 3.5 years, it's a much more streamlined process. So what brands are going to work or carry the type of pieces that you're looking for. If you're looking for an English style shoe, Herring Shoes is great. Church is obviously Crockett and Jones. If you're looking for, if I'm looking for fine tailoring, I'm not going to look at the Gap. If I'm looking for a Herring jacket or for a Y3 or for a polo, the Gap is the place I'm going to look. I think the other thing that's happening right now that I find fascinating, it's really, really interesting, is just the number of micro brands that are coming up. They're doing made-to-measure pieces, or they're having a slightly different approach, doing the direct-to-consumer business model. So there's a lot of these micro brands that are coming up that are making really, really great pieces, great footwear, great jackets, but people don't really hear about them. So I'm enjoying kind of exposing these little discoveries that I'm finding around the internet. I'm enjoying kind of exposing those to the audience as well.
What I love about what you've done, and I think you've always done this, you love giving credit where credit is due. And in fact, you've done an amazing job crowdsourcing the Bond community and saying, if you have an alternative, send it to me. No pride of ownership. You will get credit. We'll put it up there. We'll evaluate it with all of those. And it seems to be kind of your mantra, if you will.
Yeah. Right from the very start, it was important for me to make sure that credit was being given to everybody that I could. Obviously to you and to Matt Spazer from the Suits of James Bond. So many others out there that have been kind of the trailblazers in this, and you laid the groundwork. So the way I look at the website is that it does operate kind of like a funnel. I just basically go out there on the internet and I kind of harvest all this information I can find that have come from all these different influencers and all these different experts. I don't pretend to be an expert in everything. You can't be that. So whether it's watches or whether it's shoes, I'll just go out there and kind of scrape together everything I can possibly find and throw it all in at the top of this funnel. And what I hope is at the end of the funnel, I've kind of distilled kind of a practical list to say, okay, here's everything that we know about this particular piece. And here are 5 or 6 or whatever alternatives that will get the job done for you, depending on your budget or whether your body style, your body shape, whatever it might be. So giving credit to everybody and bringing it all in, it really does kind of, to me, the website should be a community resource center.
It is. It's become, it's a hub. It's a great way for people to connect. I know people get so excited. I told somebody the other day that it's almost like you have premieres around, hey, we're about to launch this and get ready, guys, and boom, it's here, and people get extremely excited about it, which is fantastic that you do that. Your passion and your fandom, your love of Bond shine through, truly.
Oh, thank you. No, there's at the end of the day, there's very little John in the website. It's much more about the community and bringing and really kind of recognizing that. I think one of the interesting things that's come out of the site for me has been this ability to open up the discussion. And, we're not operating in isolation, that we are this global community that is working together. To explore our love of this franchise, or the love of these films. So maintaining that idea, it has to be authentic that way. It has to be transparent, that this isn't me out there finding everything, that there's so many other people that are contributing to this and bringing great alternatives and writing reviews of these as well. I can't get my hands on everything. Right. You can't get your hands on everything. But if somebody's bought something and they DM me on Facebook and they say, hey, this, your alternative that you recommended, it sucked. It was horrible. It was a bad idea. I'll put that into the post. I'll update it and say, I got to kind of cross this one off the list, guys, because this person over here said it wasn't good. So it just keeps adding value to the resource center. I think if we keep it open that way and very honest about what we're providing to people.
I'm curious about this. Do the visitors police it a little bit? So if somebody goes to a link and the link is broken or no longer available, do they get in touch with you, or do you literally have to go through and scrub it and clean it?
A bit of both. Okay. People help a lot with that, saying that the link is broken and or it's out of stock now is a very common one. Usually what I try and do is update the post twice a year. So once at the start of the spring, summer season, and once at the start of the fall, winter season. That's usually when I go through and scrub everything that I possibly can. One of the criteria that I look for when I'm providing an alternative or suggesting an alternative is the sizing, obviously, what is available. So you can go to, for example, yox.com, which is just, it's a clearinghouse for designer clothing. And there's lots of great alternatives on there, but there's only one size 42. So what's the point in posting that? There's no point in really, sharing that out there. It's going to last for a day, and then I'll have to update the post anyway. So one of the criteria that I look for is availability, and hopefully that product will remain in stock for 3 to 4 months, or they'll restock it, or something that's been in a company or in a brand's lineup for a while, and we know that it's going to be restocked fairly regularly. So that's one way I kind of self-police it.
So how do replicators factor into this? And do you even post about replicators like Magnoli and obviously Royal? Did they also get some limelight as well?
Absolutely, yes. especially for the pieces that are no longer available to us. Daniel Love and Indy have both, they've been huge help to the community that wants to explore this style more, because they are bringing to the table things that we just simply can't get, no matter what the price is.
Right.
I kind of go back to the Mr. White Dior jacket. How many of those were made? What, 15, I think?
Yeah, not many at all. Yeah.
Right. So there's like 10, 15 out there on the entire market. So when Daniel kind of does his version of it and puts it at a price point that's affordable to a wider range of people, that's a huge benefit.
Yeah.
I know that there's always that I don't want to say controversy, but there's always that question of whether or not they're crossing a line in terms of duplicating something that's already on the market. I would say, for example, being completely honest about this, the only piece that Daniel has created, or the only piece that I've seen, would be the Bond P coat, where that was the only piece that I've actually said, I'm a little hesitant about this simply because Billy Reed's is still out there, and it's a gorgeous jacket. So there has to be a good reason for me to recommend this reproduction over the original. So I'm asking those questions a lot as well, because the ethics of it, I think, are very, very important.
That's a good point. And I would imagine, I've thought about this from time to time. I think there's a tipping point too. So if a replica jacket costs $350 and you can get your hands on a Billy Reed for $450 or something like that, should you spend the extra $100 and just get the real deal?
Yeah. It's a question that we have to ask ourselves a lot. The big one for me is watches. Watches, I just won't put any repros out there because most of the repros, number one, is much lower quality. They're not going to last anybody very long. Yeah. And number two, everyone knows it's a repro. If you're out there walking around with a fake Omega and you think you're fooling anyone, you're not.
Yeah.
To me, it's better to say, look, here's one that, on a list of 10 things that would be ideal, this has 7 of them. That's your better investment. That's the better place to spend your money, because number one, you're not going to be fooling anybody, but number two, you're putting your money into a good watch that's going to last you.
Let me ask you a question. So Iconic Alternatives is clearly well known in the Bond community. Have you ever been communicated to by a brand? Have they ever reached out to you?
Sure. Yeah, quite a few. It's been, I think about what, from a business perspective, what Iconic Alternatives can offer to a brand. Because in some ways, my position is a little bit difficult, because I'm saying, here's the original, this is great, you should, if you can afford it, this is what you should get. But then here's a whole bunch of other things that you could buy instead. So it's, it's kind of a catch-22 situation. But when when a brand contacts me, and I think this is something that, we would have in common. It is very difficult, because oftentimes when a brand approaches, an influencer or a website or whatever it might be, they're looking for their entire range to be promoted. Yeah. And because we tend to be relatively niche, we have to be a little bit more selective about what we can pull out of their portfolio of products to say this is worthy of. I know you've been trying to do it with the brands of Bond, where you're trying to introduce people to the broader range of products that a particular brand might carry. So that's a challenge for me, because I can say to people, I can put this on the website and recommend it, and hopefully I'll help you sell a lot of X product. But if you're coming to me and saying you also want me to promote this jacket and these shoes and these pants, I can't really do that, because it doesn't fit into the I don't like using the term brand story, but it doesn't fit into the niche that we've kind of carved out here. Yeah. And that's a challenge for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there really is a risk of pushing away your audience and, losing the authenticity, because what I've done is I'll do, here's the dead on Bond brand thing. Here's things that I think Bond would wear that are Bond-ish in the brand. And I've done some of that with like Willibard Brown and NPL. And then literally, like, this has nothing to do with Bond, but it's kind of a brand introduction. And that last one isn't necessary. If people become engaged with these brands and they fall in love with these brands, the curiosity is going to make them explore it. I mean, that's what we are. We're hunters and explorers. So they'll get there. But for a brand to insist that you push them in that direction. That's not how people buy.
No, no. There's an interesting dynamic that's at play here. I think one of the advantages that you and some other influencers have is that the story around a particular piece that you're talking about or that you're introducing your audience to, the story behind that piece is already there. It already has that bond connection. So you don't have to do anything more to endorse it. You just have to talk about what you like about it, what you don't, how does it fit. You can get into the details. The challenge, and again, we're just talking about from a business perspective, the challenge for me is finding that balance between, is this good enough to recommend to my audience? That's always the first question that I ask. Is this something that I would buy myself? Because I'm one of my readers, right? That's why I started in the same place as everybody else. So that's the first question is this something I would actually buy for myself and use and wear? But then I also have to, when I'm talking to the brand, I actually have to then, my selling point is that I can connect a piece that might not previously had a story behind it. I can plug it into a story that the people are passionate about. But in order for me to be able to keep doing that, I have to maintain trust and authenticity and all those things. I mean, if I'm not always putting the audience first, if I'm not making sure that I'm always providing value and quality, then that connection, that trust is going to be lost, and then whatever I say is going to be worthless. Yeah. So it's always about putting the audience first. It's always about making sure that the readers and the other fans, that I'm coming from a place that genuinely wants to make sure that what I'm recommending here is a good product. And so that's a lot of research and a lot of digging and a lot of making sure that I'm covering all my bases.
All right, these next series of questions are going to be kind of fun. They're almost game-like. So
okay.
Hopefully they'll be fun and relaxing. We'll see, though. So let's say that somebody acknowledges the amazing job that you've done at a pretty senior level and says, something, we are going to give you your holy grail of James Bond clothing or accessory items. They can be branded. In fact, maybe they should be branded, so they could be the correct screen accurate ones. What is that one item that you want?
That I want? That's a tough, I honestly, maybe the Casino Royale leather jacket.
The Armani jacket.
Yeah, the Armani. Yeah.
Good
maybe
choice.
The Armani. Just because I know from experience that there's the matchless is still available. So, and there's good replicas or good alternatives out there for the matchless. I already have the Barber, but the Armani I think would be a bit of a grail for me. I love leather jackets, so being able to get my hands on one of those would be, I think that would be a pretty cool thing.
That's a good one. And I know there's been a few replicas. They all missed the mark. And then there's been discussion of projects, and the projects never come to fruition because they find it's going to be too expensive and labor intensive. So that's a good choice. I like that. That's a good one. All right. Second game question. And this is all just to get to know you a little bit better. It's a Saturday. The phone rings. You pick it up. On the other end, it's a very senior executive from Eon Productions. And they say, John, I know that you don't know that we've been following Iconic Alternatives, but we love what you're doing. You're bringing to the masses the opportunity to connect with James Bond at different age levels and at different economic levels. As a gift, we are going to give you whatever Bond experience you want. You could go hang gliding with a cigar. You could interview Daniel Craig. You could be in No Time to Die as an extra. Whatever you want that experience to be, it is yours. John, what is that experience? I told you this would be tough.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Okay, you know what? I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to do the 3 G. What's your first wish? I want more wishes. Driving the DB5 while interviewing Gianni Tamimi. Driving the DB5 through Scotland while interviewing Gianni Tamimi.
That's phenomenal. Oh, I love that one. No one's ever chose anything like that. Not even like that. That's great.
Yeah, I just think it would be, the DB5 is, what can you say about it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, being able to drive that along the Scottish road and kind of reenacting that scene from Skyfall, and all the atmosphere with the mist and everything, but also being able to talk to somebody who was digging, who actually designed, it was really responsible for creating a lot of these looks that we admire so much. And they've inspired us so much. What was she thinking? Her thought process behind these, and how did she decide that this jacket was going to go with these cords, and where did these boots come from? And I think there'd just be a lot of understanding the strategy behind this.
Yeah.
Would be a huge learning experience. I'd really appreciate that.
To me, that's probably, first of all, I love that. That's excellent. It's the most fascinating aspect of costume design, and I don't think a lot of people think about it. They think about how it looks in the movie, but I'm now more fascinated with the process before it gets in the movie. When I found out that literally there's a room with racks of clothing and tables littered with stuff, and they go through with storyboards and align the storyboard to the clothing, and they try on different things, and Daniel Craig's influence is undeniable. To me, that story is so much more interesting and intriguing than saying, oh, well, he wore it in that scene in the movie. And it sounds like you feel the same way.
Yeah, it's something that we were discussing on AGB, that in that thread, where how do we move from that there's a kind of a point of inflection, right, where we start off by copying the styles, but when does that copying, imitation, translate into or transform into inspiration?
Yeah.
And that to me is all about strategy. That's all about, giving conscious thought to how things work together. Why are you wearing this? Why would you choose that? Is it the right fit for you? That to me is a more interesting discussion now than just simply saying, here's a Harrington jacket that looks like the Tom Ford.
Yeah.
Why does it look that way? Why did they choose that jacket? Why did they go with the navy instead of the white? To me, being able to dig in deeper into that aspect of it, I think would be really, really interesting.
I tell you, I would buy all day long, and I think a lot of people would, a book that went through and interviewed some of the, the 3 or 4 Bond costume designers, their point of view on their thinking process, and even the mishaps. Like, why did they go to an Alfani shirt for Casino Royale?
Yeah.
Was that a mistake? They were going to use something and then just went to JCPenney's or Macy's and said, we just got to grab something off the rack. I'd love to hear about those accidental stories.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That could be your next interview series.
All right. Damn it. I'm going to write this shit.
So I have a question for you, though. No, I've got one question.
Yeah, please. Of course. Do it.
Bond 26.
Hmm.
What brands would you like to see in Bond 26?
Oh gosh, this is public. Okay, so I would love to see some of them continue, like the British brands, and I do. I have a huge affection for all of our Brown and NPL. NPL is just great because the people are so authentic, and it's a very British brand. It's connected to the royals and stuff like that. But I would like to see more British brands, and it's not to discount the American brands or the Italian brands, but I love it when they really Anglophile Bond up. So just going back to some of the basics, Savile Row type brands, and just kitting him out. Literally, you could walk, and this, around Savile Row or Jermyn Street. Within 6 blocks, you have everything that Bond is ever going to need, from his relaxing clothes to his shoes to his belts to his grooming to his suiting. Turnbull and Asser, I'd love to see Turnbull and Asser in there again. I think they have an amazing history, plus the quality of their thing. I just posted today, I don't know when this is showing up, but a video on their bespoke shirts. Oh my gosh. So, those are kind of my quick wish list. What about you? Quid pro quo?
Definitely in the same, I'm definitely in the same lane as you in terms of moving more towards more heritage brands, British heritage brands. I think would be interesting to see those come back into the mix. Grenfell, I think, would be an interesting one. I think Grenfell is doing some really, really cool things right now. That, it's a heritage British brand. They've been around since 1902, I think. So not to take anything away from Barber, but I think the Grenfell would be an interesting one to put into that mix. But yeah, I'd like to see those little nods to those kind of British heritage brands. I think would be very, very interesting. To even have kind of Floris being kind of on his bathroom counter kind of thing. I think just those little nods would be a nice touch.
It would be amazing. Mm-hmm. All right, last question, but it's a good one. The future of iconic alternatives, the vision, what you're looking to do to maybe evolve iconic alternatives. Talk to us about that.
Just keep doing really what I'm doing right now and kind of expanding the scope of that. One of I guess if there's two things that interest me right now. One is more exploring the idea of what's behind personal style and talking more about that strategy, talking more about, how do we develop our personal style? What are the steps that we can go through to make it, as painless a process as possible and as much fun as we can make it? That's something that really interests me, and I hope to get more interviews and more insight into what is behind that strategy. In terms of the content, starting to maybe look at other style icons. Obviously, we're covering Steve McQueen right now, but the list is endless. I mean, we can look at Paul Newman, we can look at Robert Redford, we can look at, and it's funny to me that now that I'm exploring a little bit outside this bubble of Bond and looking at these, we think it's funny because on Instagram, there's 100 accounts for James Bond and James Bond style, and it's just some great content that people are putting out there. As soon as you look at Robert Redford, there's another 100 accounts that are doing exactly the same thing. And you look at Paul Newman, and there's another 100 accounts that are doing exactly the same thing. So, it's really interesting to kind of reach out and find more influences and how they can kind of mix together and to help people develop their own personal style. That's an area that I really am interested in right now, is more the philosophy behind it.
It's fantastic. Would you ever turn iconic alternatives into an app?
I never thought of it. To be honest with you,
you can give me credit.
Thank you. Yeah. Again, geez. No, I don't know. I don't know what. I honestly don't know how that would function. The truth is that putting the content and the products first is always going to be the strategy. Always going to be the, always talking about the influence and how that influence relates to X jacket or X. That always has to be kind of the process. In terms of creating other media like videos and like a podcast or something, the truth is I'm just not that interesting a guy. So I couldn't hold somebody's attention for 30 minutes. I couldn't do what you guys do. I just couldn't do it.
I hate to break this to you.
No.
People have been watching this for over 30 minutes, so you're doing it. You don't do yourself enough justice.
We should wrap it up because your traffic is about to start dropping.
We're fine.
So, I don't know. I think it's taking it step by step. When I first started the site, I tried to throw a bunch of stuff on the wall to see what sticks. So I did like a classified section, and I tried to do, bringing in more guest writers and just trying to do a lot of different things. I have to be much more kind of practical about it now, or much more strategic about my thinking in terms of where I want to take it next. I think just keep growing and keep offering quality content. I think that's going to be the strategy that always keeps moving us forward.
We love that strategy. You got to keep it going. John, thank you so much for doing this today. And despite your self-deprecating humor, people, I guarantee, love this conversation. And thank you for Iconic Alternatives. I know it is a labor of love, but it is still labor. So thank you for bringing it to us, truly.
No, it's my pleasure. And I get as much out of creating the posts as people probably do, more than people probably do get, from reading them. And again, thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This has been John from Iconic Alternatives and David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience, and we will see you very soon. Take care. Thanks for watching this episode. If you want to be up on the latest from the Bond experience, just click on this subscribe and subscribe to our channel. You're going to get all the latest and greatest information, plus some exclusive content. And by the way, speaking of content, here's something especially for you, just because we know you. Talk to you soon.